Hey, I'm Alex Radical from Board Game Co.
I'm Professor Mike.
And today we are reviewing the Mandalorian adventures from Unexpected Games. I always have to remember that title. I always want to say Rebel Games for some reason. I don't know why, but it's Unexpected Games. The Mandalorian Adventures. We're going to briefly talk about how this game plays. If you want a bit more of a full overview, you can go ahead and check out our gameplay. We have a gameplay of one of the later missions, the third mission in the game specifically, and in that we go through more of the full pattern. That said, to go ahead and get you loosely caught up with some of the stuff that happens, I'll just touch base on the general structure of the game, the way a turn generally goes, just the cliff notes to it before we dive into reviews and opinions and all that. And to that end, the Mandalorian Adventure is going to be an episodic game where you go through the stories of the Mandalorian, specifically Season 1. You're going to be going through the arc. You're going to start off over here. This might be familiar. There's actually another page of like comics that you can go through, kind of giving you the brief story. Then you have Bounty on Avala 7. Again, if you've watched The Mandalorian, this will all be clear to you in general, and you're going to be trying to hunt down and find the child and then exit. That's going to be your basic starting mission. But then from there, you are going to go ahead and dive into a continued sequence of missions. When you first get this book, and you know what, I'll save some of the spoiler stuff. I'm going to cover some spoiler stuff, but I'll do so with a bit of a tag. And again, the spoilers are minimal here. They are very, very minimal. But nonetheless, in case you want full surprise, we'll go through that. So, there's 4 maps in the game over here. There's going to be 4 basic maps to go through. 4 missions you're going through, and it has a bit of a legacy element to it. The idea being that you have a deck of cards you're going through that as you play a game, you'll unlock more content, you'll add more cards to decks, you'll unlock different ways to play, different things like that, and all this will just continue to expand upon the gameplay that you start off with. Before getting into spoilers, I'll just say that whatever you think is the amount of content in this game at first glance is not actually the amount of content in this game. But along the way, you're going through these adventures, and you are unlocking content and different ways to play while going through a basic arc of each game, and that arc is going to be where every single turn you're going to have a hand of cards over here. You're going to go ahead and draw a hand of cards, which is 4 unless you're playing on hard mode. You'll have a hand of 4 cards, and then you'll play those cards to different actions in the game. There's 4 basic actions. Sometimes there are additional mission-specific actions, and those actions will help you move. They'll help you attack. Those are going to be 2 very core things in the game. We have Intel, which helps you move other threats in the game, or alternatively peek at face-down tokens, which gives you a lot of information. And Plan will help you draw cards from this deck, which gives you extra things you can do. Now, when your card totals 5 or more on any of these tracks, if it's above 5, you'll resolve the threat in the game over here. You'll resolve an extra level threat against you if it's ever 6 or higher, and that's going to be mission dependent. If it's 5 exactly, you're just going to resolve an event card. And to be clear, if it's 6 or higher, you'll do the threat and the event card. You're doing both, not either or. The event card deck is going to be over here, and it tells you what kinds of things are going to activate. So sometimes you know that melee characters are activating, sometimes you know that range characters are activating. You'll know what's going on. In this case, it's kind of a bit of everything. We don't have a clarity on that particular one, so we have to be very careful about all the various characters here. Meanwhile, we're moving our characters around the board, trying to interact, shoot, fight, take down, maneuver all the various enemies, because there are a host of enemies, and they'll be dealing with us, engaging with us in different ways, based on the various events that come out, and we need to make sure that we can take them out responsibly before they slowly deal damage to us, because we have very limited life force, and that's going to be even less if you're playing on the slightly more advanced mode of the game. That's the core idea of the game. Now, a lot of things will change, unlock, all these different things will happen as you go through the game, but you're basically trying to play cards. You're going to get stronger cards, are going to have stronger actions. So if I play a 3 to this over here, it's going to be a stronger action than if I play a 1 here, but it does so at the cost of making it so that the event is happening faster, and the event is how the enemy attacks you. That's basically the core game. Now, this is where I'm going to tell you spoiler warning, and I'll appropriately timestamp this. I will give you a bit of a spoiler warning so I can tell you about the stuff that will be unlocked. I'm not going to be going into intense detail, but I do want to give a bit of an overview because I think it's relevant to know, especially as we dive into the review. So to that end, spoiler warning. I'll do a nice little countdown. You want to do like sound effects for 30 seconds? Not 30 seconds. For 5 seconds. Sound effects for 5 seconds. I was hoping for the Star Wars theme song, but that does work. It does work.
That was the air battle.
This is better. This way we don't get demonetized.
Yeah.
Anyway, so now that we've done the spoiler stuff, let's talk about a few of the things you'll unlock. And again, none of this is that big a deal, but it's worth knowing the types of content you have in the game, which is you start the game with 4 maps to go through. There's 4 physical maps to go through. And you might think that that means there's only 4 missions, and there's not, because the big thing the game is going to add very quickly is going to be these cards over here, and there's going to be a bunch of these cards over here, and they're going to give you different ways that you can play the game, where effectively what you do is you overlay this onto a previous mission, and then you can use any characters you want, or sometimes they may have specific characters. You're going to be going ahead ahead and engaging with the mission with a different set of rules and adjustments to the mission. So you're revisiting the same map, the same terrain, but a different way to play. There's also going to be a hidden traitor mode, where one player might be operating against the others. There's also going to be a, well, again, this is the fun part over here. There's going to be a Baby Yoda deck, basically, where Baby Yoda, when he shows up in a mission, Grogu, that's the one. I thought Baby Yoda, you're right.
Grogu.
You're right. Grogu's going to have his own little deck you can utilize when he's in missions. Again, that's something you unlock later. There's going to be characters that actually have abilities. So you have all these characters that actually have abilities on them as opposed to just having, the basic health stat and whatnot. They already do have asymmetric decks, but that adds a further layer of asymmetry. And that's in addition to just a ton of other stuff. There's going to be new characters, new abilities. There's going to be cards that are constantly being added to your deck. I'm focusing on some of the highlights in addition to the fact that every single game across the first I'll say it, again, I warned you about spoilers. Across the first 6 games, you're going to be unlocking additional content, and then after that, you can mix and match and build your own episodes so that you can continuously experience the replayability that's here, despite the fact that it gives you an initial character arc, and then it'll throw you off into the deep end where you can add more content, get more powerful, and deal with more powerful enemies all along the way. And with that, we're going to give a 5 seconds of spoiler-free music for the end of thingy, or sound effects. Nothing? We don't actually need the 5 seconds of warning because it doesn't matter, but I thought it'd be fun and entertaining. And with that, now that you have all returned from your spoiler land and all that, let's go ahead and talk about our thoughts on the game. Let's dive into the review, starting off where we have our usual, what we like, don't like, can see others not liking, starting off with what we like. Meg, what do you like about the game?
I really like the action system. I really like that you have these shared basic actions and that you're using your cards that the later you get throughout the game, the more custom your abilities become, that you have special things that you get to do. But I really like that, I think for the co-op style of it, working together and knowing that you have you're speaking the same language with actions. And I also really liked changing my thought process for things like the intel action. With intel, if there's an enemy revealed, you can move them. And if you're moving, the enemies stop your movement. So that's one way to kind of maneuver around them instead of trying to just kill your way through them, which is what I usually do. That I think it was really clever, and I did really enjoy the action system. And that's also something that they use to customize the scenarios. It's like slight spoiler alert. But other actions come up. And yeah, I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, I definitely like the action system. The control you have over when the events happen is a big deal for me as well. The fact that there are times when it is better or worse for enemies to deal stuff, and there often are going to be trade-offs where you're like, you know what, I know I want to attack right now, but I also have like 3 gunmen around me, and guns are activating right now, so how about I move first and we deal with the event next round? So you will have control over the timing of the game and actual agency decisions around that. I do like how simple the game is, and that's going to be a pro and a con, we'll get to that, but the game is very simple and very straightforward in terms of the way that you read in the rule book, you have a few pages of rules, you can dive straight in, it's very intuitive, it makes a lot of sense, there's not a lot of complexities, even things like line of sight, for better or for worse, some of you may not like this, even things like line of sight, you can just shoot around corners. They don't worry about that. They're like, hey, here's range, count range, shoot around corners, do what you will. Especially if you're playing as, the Mandalorian himself, you can imagine that they're like rockets with like whatever, targeting who knows what. Some characters more or less, use your imagination, but they keep it very straightforward. The game is very easy to dive into, the missions are going to be very variable, the content you unlock is going to add to that variability, and it does escalate nicely as far as giving you more and more things to add to your decision making. Like the first mission starts off very basic, very straightforward, and it gets progressively more interesting as you go through it. So I do like the general system, I like the progression, I love the thematic immersion. This is a big deal in general. Like for me, this game is absolutely elevated by the theme. I've watched The Mandalorian, I've enjoyed The Mandalorian, and the fact that you're playing through these missions, like even this first mission right here, I was excited to dive into it because we're gonna get Baby Yoda, Grogu. We're gonna get Grogu. We're gonna get Grogu over here, and we're gonna find him and rescue him and use him in other missions, and that kind of thing is like it's fun to play through this mission with the theme that's on there. I should note, by the way, these little acrylic standees, these are an extra. They are not with the basic game. You can have regular cardboard standees with the basic game. You can buy those as an extra add-on somewhere somehow, but they're acrylic standee add-on over there. But yeah, overall, I like the action system. I like I like the ease of the game. I like the decision-making around timing of the events. Overall, a fun strategic puzzle. Anything else on your end?
You know, now I'm realizing, you guys, I just got a droid from the Star Wars world, and I meant to bring her here to show her off, and I forgot. But that brings me to what my second thought was that for a world that I really love, I do think this was really immersive. I think that there are some games that take IPs and don't always do it as well. And I think especially the acrylic standees, and like the different decks that you have to the actions that you're doing and the different scenarios that you're playing through, I do think it just did it so well that that's something that I think just sat really well with me, that I enjoyed the Star Wars of it all. Because again, there are some games.
I like that. I like that
I
sentence.
loved
I
it.
love the Star Wars of it all.
Yeah, I think they did it really well. I think this was a really really good way to do it, and it makes a lot of sense and feels natural. Yeah.
As far as things you don't like,
Something I didn't love is that with these tokens, some of them, the way that they're set up at the beginning of the game, they're kind of shuffled, and the ones that you're looking for could be anywhere. And where I don't mind that, I think that that could, like, it really affected some things as far as how long certain missions were and how easy or hard they were. So I understand, like, to a certain extent, I do want it randomized, and I'm not sure. I don't know, because it felt like some of them, it could be such a wide range of things that some of them could be very, very short based on how you do it.
even if you watch our gameplay, you'll get an idea of one of the things she's talking about, where depending on the place something shows up, it could be an easier or harder mission.
Right. So I do think that was something that I noticed that kind of stood out to me. It didn't really change the experience for me, but I think I could see it changing after a lot more gameplays if it starts ending up being, you know, a certain way.
Yeah. For me, I'll say that there's a few things. The first thing I'll say is that the way the game ramps you into it can be a good thing if you persevere through it. So the fact that you go through this progression, this arc, you start off, you play some characters, you get a very basic mission. If you're going to stick with it, I like that. I think it's a good thing. The tricky part is I do think there's times and ways in which it makes the game less ideal to start off with. And I mean that in two ways. The first way is going to be that the early missions, until you start unlocking stuff, are much more simplistic. You really need to get to, I think, at least mission 3 before you really start to get to a point where it feels like you're actually making decisions that matter as opposed to just doing the obvious thing. And that will further continue as you get more and more stuff, as the enemies get harder, as you get more abilities. That ramp up is a good ramp up, but you have to, like, if you're going to play the first 2 missions and then tap out, like, that might happen. And the second way it's an issue is that even the player count limitation. Like, the first 2 missions, you basically have to play them with 2 characters each. Not 2 characters each, 2 characters total, which means if you're playing, if you want to play this with 3 or 4 players, you can't do that in the first 2 missions unless you use something called the shared action mode or whatever it is, in which you basically stop being thematic and just, you know, shuffle up characters and mess around with it a different way, which, in a way that feels not great. Like, the first time I wanted to play this, I wanted to play this as a 4-player game, and I was like, well, I can play it in a way that seems inefficient, or I could just cut it down to playing as a 2-player game. And that will change as you go through it. You'll unlock more characters. You have different ways that you'll change that. Again, the things that will make the missions more variable will open that up for you. But it does mean that starting off the game, you're like in this weird place. Like, it's a weird arc that kind of limits the enjoyability of the game and the accessibility of the game, and that does open up, but you have to get past those parts first. So I think the ramp up is a good thing to an extent, but it comes at the cost of possibly making the initial experience less ideal until you get to the good parts. Anything else for you?
That was actually my second thing, is just mentioning that the first few missions are very easy. It is just kind of trying to get you to get through, like, the pace of the game and through, like, turn structure, and it isn't representative of the game. So if you can only get through, like, the first 2 missions, I don't think it really shows you how deep the game can get, and it can get very, very difficult after that. Because I even noticed for the main deck, I don't think you even shuffle your discard to reuse it until the second mission. Because the first one is easy enough. Yeah, so you don't really get to see enough of the game until you hit those later missions. And then a lot of the variability does make a lot of sense, and it's like, wow, there is a lot to this. But it is kind of a shame that you don't have as hard of missions available to you to play through the actual storyline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As far as I can see others not liking, I think there's one thing just being that's worth being mindful of, especially if you're diving into the game, which most of the decision making to me in this game, it came down to managing the sequence of your turns versus enemy turns. This isn't the game where you have, like, cool attack cards. Well, this actually are some. There's a few cool attack cards, but for the most part, your attacks are pretty straightforward. You play a number, you do that much damage to an enemy. The attacking, for the most part, past the occasional card combo, which, again, occasionally you'll feel really cool, but most of your attacks are basically...
Mandalorian has some pretty good ones.
I mean, not just the Mandalorian. There are some pretty cool combos, but I would say most of your attacks in the game are going to be player 2, deal 2 damage. That's it. No mitigation, no nothing. Just straight up dealing damage to character to take them out. To me, I think the biggest part where the game does give you agency and choice and actual tactical planning, and again, it matters more as you ramp up through the game, is going to be managing the sequence of when the enemies act versus when you act. And also playing on not novice mode. If you play in novice mode, it's a little easier. Ramp it up a bit, take a little bit of health away, and then sit there and try to make sure you get the timing down right. And that is rewarding for me. I like that sequence, but ultimately, if you're looking for something that like feels more dynamic, it doesn't feel more dynamic on the battlefield. It feels like enemies spawn, you kill them. What you're trying to manage is the pacing of when enemies take their turn and how to make the most out of the system. But as far as...
One thing that I don't think we said, you might have said it, Alex, and I'm sorry if you did, but for the action selection, you can also only play 1 card per action when you're playing your 2 cards. So you are pretty limited that you can't like attack twice or move twice to get through scenarios. That I think that was also just like I enjoyed that part about it. It was very.
It forces you into hard choices.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. As far as final thoughts and rating on this one, do you have final thoughts, rating, any of those things?
I really enjoyed this one. I don't know if it's coming across that I'm excited about it. I say check out our gameplay about it because I am being like very direct, I feel like, in this video. But I did overall really enjoy it. I think that it really gives you like the feel of the storyline. And I really liked that piece about it. But it is a co-op game, so I don't know. If you don't like that, you're not going to like this part. As far as my rating...
I'm always curious. I find more and more...
You're not sure what I'm going to say?
More, like, I play half these games with you, and more
Yeah.
and more I find that what you
don't know
say,
what to
like,
say.
I have no clue.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I want, and we might just do it, we might just make this part of the Meg scale. I want to give this a 3.75.
Oh, we're doing that now.
To me, this would be a 3.75.
Side tangent that's relevant here. There's been a few games recently that have made me want to expand the scale. It's a complicated conversation.
Is this
I haven't
one of
done
them?
it. No, actually.
Okay.
Actually, no.
Okay.
There have been a few games recently where I've
Yeah.
wanted to like expand the scale. It's complicated.
I was so close between the two that I was like, if you made me choose right now, I think I would say a 4.
Yeah.
But I'm at 3.75. I'm right on that cusp.
I've had that problem. We can have a long conversation otherwise. So for context, if you don't know, we do a 5-point scale. We do 0.5s. We don't do less than that. Yes, that is basically the equivalent of a 10-point scale. I know. There's the possibility that we expand the scale in the future. It's not happening at this moment. Anyways, well, I mean, it is happening in this moment, but... for me, I am going to give it a 3.5 out of 5. I do like it. I do enjoy the game. The main thing that I enjoy ultimately is the combination of the thematic aspect of the game and then the tactical planning around when the enemies take their turns. Ultimately, I think if you take the theme off, I just wouldn't be playing this. I think the theme does elevate it a lot, but that's not a bad thing. The theme can elevate a game. There are many games that the theme elevates it for me, and that's okay. But I think ultimately I enjoy this. I do think I'm going to continue to play a few configurations of the various things that get unlocked so I can experience more of the different ways things mix and match. But I don't think it's a game I would sit and table forever. I think it's an experience that I've enjoyed going through. I'll test it out a little bit more, see a few more options. I will say, I should touch upon this, we haven't played the hidden traitor mode, and I don't think I have any intention of doing so.
Yeah.
It just doesn't feel like my vibe. I mean, I'm sure you can find characters where it'd be thematic. It doesn't feel like my vibe overall, not for what this experience is giving, so I can't comment on that. But anyways, a 3.5 out of 5. In any case, until next time.
No. Wait,
recommendations.
My own view.
Well, great. You can do both because I forgot to do those.
Okay, well then I have a couple.
Go ahead.
Okay, so for a game that would give you a thematic experience of walking you through a story that doesn't ask too much of you, highly cooperative by Cosmos, is it the Journey to Mount Doom? The Journey through Middle Earth?
The Lord of the Rings one?
Yes.
I think it's called Lord of the Rings
Journey through Middle Earth?
Journey to Middle Earth?
It's Journeys in Middle Earth.
Lord of the Rings, the adventure game. I believe.
You're right.
That's what it is. I think it's Lord of the Rings, the adventure game.
The other one we haven't played yet, and that's one with dice.
I don't know the other. Oh, that one. Yeah, the Cosmos
That one we haven't gone to play yet.
Yeah.
Okay, so that one, very, very good, top tier. I think this is also very reminiscent if you want something bigger than this, if you play this and then want something that gives more of an experience. Agamonia is very similar to this. It gives you a booklet. It does start you off like pretty slow through a tutorial to introduce you to a lot of the rules, but then you move on to like miniatures and a whole lot more going on. Those are the two that I was thinking of.
Cool. I didn't think of any, but I will say if you are thinking an adventure book, I do think that Stuffed Fables? That's what I was gonna say.
Stuffed Fables. Stuffed Fables is also similar to this. Shout out to Jaws the Lion if we want to talk about... If we just want to rattle.
Sure.
You're like, no, don't, please.
Not how I do recommendations, but you can.
Well, the other one I thought of was Divinity Original Sin, which, again, is a bigger box game, but gives you a similar experience of a co-op adventure going through a map together.
Great. And with that, until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co.
I'm Professor Meg.
And have a good one.
Bye.